Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is Stefan on the French Cooking Academy, and this week we're doing a vegetarian recipe in the form of a fennel and tomato ragout. Now, fennel is this one. It's a bit of an odd one, the fennel, and a lot of people actually, I see them, they're in the shop, they're looking at it, they go, what should I do with this thing? So I thought it was a good idea to go for a simple recipe that's going to be using a lot of fennel, and see how we do need to prepare it, and slice it, cook it, and how we can use it, of course, in a recipe. So when we talk about a fennel and tomato ragout, it doesn't mean that's the only thing that resides in the dish. These are the predominant flavors you're going to find, and then of course we're going to have a bit of eggplant, aubergine, a bit of onion, garlic, salt, pepper, a bit of parsley, and that's it. We keep it very simple. Let's go. So let's start the recipe. So the first thing we're gonna do, of course, is all the prep of the vegetables. But before we do anything, most important, you're gonna put a large saucepan with water on the stove, because we're gonna be using it to monder the tomatoes, which is peel tomatoes, and also to blanch the fennel. The first thing we're going to do after that is to cover these in salt to extract the excess of water. All right, so get all the ingredients, everything is listed in the video description. Get your knife, your chopping board, and let's get started with the aubergine. Okay, so the aubergine, depending on the recipe, we need to slice it, cut it, and then cover it in salt to extract some of its water. When you got your aubergine, usually it's like this. You start to slice it, thick slices, and if for this recipe we need to have cubes. So cubes, basically, doesn't have to be super, precise, but basically, you make this kind of baton. It's always the same, like in French cooking, and then from there, and you're gonna measure. And if you want, cubes, actually they're a bit rectangles. You have to get the hang of it, but more or less, you're gonna go for these types of things. Okay, so I'm gonna chop everything in cubes. Once we've got these, what we're gonna do is take plenty of salt and sprinkle over. And we have to leave these for a good 15-20 minutes so that all the natural water comes out a little bit, and we will rinse them afterwards. For the tomato, anytime you've got a recipe, a lot of time in these ragouts where you have to cook vegetables, in France we don't use the tomato skin. I've talked about this before. So when you have a tomato, what do? We're gonna get rid, of course, of just that, that little bit here, the green part. And because we're gonna do a monder, which simply means removing the skin, monder does not apply only to tomato. It can apply to almonds, grapes, cherries, anything. And we have to do this in boiling water. So when you want to do a monder, start with your tomatoes, take a little office knife or paring knife, you make a little cross shape at the top of the tomato, turn it around, plane your knife at an angle, and you can turn and try to remove that hard bit here. Okay? So for the monder or peeling of tomatoes, of course, it's very simple. You can use a little slotted spoon or écumoire. We're going to need boiling water in one pan, and then we've got very cold water. I put a little bit of a few ice cubes. You plunge your tomato in the boiling water for just about 5 or 10 seconds, and then we're going to take it out and plunge it in here. The thermal shock is just going to detach the skins very, very easily. Okay, so I have to resume on the other pan here. What you do here is to basically plunge this in here. So when it comes to the peeling, you can use a knife, but if you've done a good job and you've got a good quality tomato and you don't leave it too long, see what's happening? Look, I'm not doing anything, and the skin is going off on its own. I'm using my hands here to peel a tomato. See? Up. My tomatoes are ready. Now let's do the fennel. So fennel, presents like this. It always has these very thick outer leaves like this and these stalks. And the first thing you always do, you can cut all of those. You can reserve these for anything like stalks, vegetable stalks, and anything. You can cut them in pieces and freeze them. That's what I do when I make any kinds of stalks. For the outer leaves, you're gonna kind of cut a little bit of the end here. Okay, very carefully. And what's gonna happen? Look, you're gonna detach these outer ones. Are very, very hard, full of fiber. You usually don't want to eat those. And again, same thing. I'm reserving this as an offcut. If the rest is decent, like that, we're gonna cut it in half because we have to blanch it. I'll show you, how it's done in a minute. We're gonna have to slice the fennel afterwards. So You can leave it whole, but I think for the blanching, I'm just gonna cut it in half, and that's how it looks inside. And now for the blanching. A fennel always have to be blanched before it can be cooked because it's a very tough vegetable. Now what is blanching? It is simply plunging a vegetable or anything in boiling water for a few minutes for different reasons. In this case, it is to pre-cook the fennel. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm using the same water that I had for the tomatoes to save energy. Tablespoon of salt, and what you're going to do here, we're going to put the fennel, and we're going to spend a good 5 to 6 minutes cooking those. And that's it. As soon as they're cooked, same thing as the tomato, we're not going to peel them, and we're going to stop the cooking by plunging these into a cold water bath. 5 minutes have passed, heat off, and immediately I'm going to take my fennel from the boiling water to the very cold water to stop the cooking. We don't want any further cooking of the fennel. Now let's finish the mise en place. My aubergines are ready. I'm going to put them in a sieve and rinse them under cold water to get rid of the excess of salt. And for your tomatoes, and they've been peeled, and we need to remove the seeds. So you can press them by hand like that, or I use a finger and extract the pulp. You keep the shell, like this, and we're going to cut this in quarters. The onion is going to have to be thinly sliced, and you can just peel and remove the germ of your garlic, and we'll be done. And that's it. My mise en place is now ready. So as you can see, I've got my tomatoes, my fennel, my aubergine, the onions, the parsley that is ready to be chopped at the end, and I've got the garlic here with the germ removed. The reason I wanted to take you through all the steps of this mise en place is to show you that there is always a lot of techniques that sit behind the recipe. And these kinds of things are the things we're covering in my online course. You see, a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between your channel and your course? Well, this is the kinds of things you're going to learn. How to blanch, how to cut vegetable, how to slice, all these little things. Because as you can see, there's more than meets the eye in a recipe. And it's always very important to know how to make a mise en place. So now we can start cooking. Now this particular recipe is easy going. It's a low heat where we're really gonna gently cook the vegetables. There's no high heat involved at all. So I'm gonna bathe my onion first in the oil and then add the fennel in. Perfect. So now I'll make a little space on here. I'm gonna add my fennel. And same thing with a little bit of oil. Okay, so I've left this warm up a little bit for 2 minutes, and then very gently I'm gonna mix everything together. So onions and fennel, and I'm gonna continue to cook this mix. Let it melt, as we say, really like a compote. So we don't want to break anything. On low heat, 10 minutes, uncovered first, just with these two. My fennel and onion is almost ready. It is time to add the tomatoes and aubergine. Before we do so, I'd like to tell you something about common practice in culinary schools and restaurants about tomatoes. The rule is usually as follows. You should only use fresh tomatoes when they are in the height of season. If you look at these, they are not the best quality, and you can see they're not ripe enough. Now, I just wanted to take you through the process of the monde, etc., etc. But when you don't have tomatoes that are fresh enough, you have to use canned tomatoes. Okay, this is what's done in schools and restaurants if you don't have the real thing. This is the next best thing. For me, because I know there's not enough juice in there and enough taste, I'm just gonna add some homemade tomato sauce in here and blend it in to get back that taste, color, and water content, and then add this in the dish. All right, with that in mind, let's continue the recipe. It was on low heat. I'm just showing you, you can see it has not burned, so very important. And from here, we're gonna add a bit of salt and pepper first. So seasoning. And the seasoning is very minimal. This is typical from the Provence region. You let the vegetable express themselves rather than putting all kinds of herbs in your dish. So you need to have quality vegetables to do that dish, otherwise you're just not gonna get anything out of it. Aubergine in, a little bit of garlic, and then of course tomatoes. Another layer of seasoning, a bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, but not much. And there's no thyme, no bay leaf. And here, instead of just mixing everything like hell, This is not the intention here. And this is typical from Provence to have these layers of vegetables and let the juices from the vegetables fall, towards the bottom, create some steam and cook gently on their own without being churned and mixed like that. It's been 30 minutes and let me give you a little bit of feedback on what I've done. So what I've realized here for sure, if your vegetables don't render enough water, make sure you add a little extra water in there and close the lid totally to cook your vegetables for 30 minutes to make sure they are cooked. When I'm ready to add the final touch to the dish, that may not be to everyone's taste. You see, the original recipe says that we need to add 3 or 4 tablespoons of chopped parsley mixed with 4 anchovy fillets. And because I want to keep it really vegetarian, I am just gonna add a generous amount of parsley and I'll keep that up to you for the anchovies if you want to add it in the dish or not, okay? I'm gonna blend that in and we're gonna leave it to cook for a further 5 minutes. I took my dish out of the heat and this is the result. This is actually the tomato and fennel ragout. Now, to be perfectly honest, when I started the recipe, when I saw the name, I was like, man, I'm not too sure about that. And I was scared it's gonna be just like a ratatouille, but wow, what I can say. I'm totally really surprised because it does look different and it looks, yeah, I love the look. Everything came together at the end actually. And I can really see the components. You see, you can see the fennel pieces here. I've got the aubergine over here. I've got the onions, and everything is, of course, tomatoes all blended in. It makes a really nice mix. So, of course, there's no anchovies in there, but you know what? I'm just gonna take a little bit of it in a bowl here and try it out. It's a very clean taste of vegetables. Definitely the bits of fennel, they really pop. You know, I like that. You eat it and when you bite into the fennel, boom, there's this explosion of fennel flavor. And it actually goes very well with the tomato intonation. And I think all the other vegetables you see here, there's just a little intonation. When you bite on the onions, they got a little crunch as well. Super interesting recipe. And that completes our little practice of the day, a little bit of mise en place that we've done and the discovery of the dish. Now, tell me what you think in the comments about this kind of variant of the dish and if you try it, because honestly, it really took me by surprise, this fennel and tomato dish. It is something that is quite interesting. I'd like to know your opinion about the anchovies. But that's it for me, guys. If you want to drop me a comment, use the comment section. If you want to follow me, of course, don't forget Facebook, Instagram, you can share your recipe, hashtag French Cook Academy. You can also become a member on the Patreon page. And like I said, if you want to learn all these technical things, join our French cooking culinary course. I'll see you all next time. Take care all. Bye-bye.